She ordered room service at the wrong hour, and I was the one who knocked. Night teaches you what people are like when they stop pretending to be daytime versions of themselves. I'm the night manager at a five-star hotel on the river, the kind of glass and marble tower that thinks it's above weather. We keep orchids alive in places where sunlight never touches, and we promise strangers their own private moon. If you've ever walked past a lobby at 2 a.m. and seen a man in a navy suit standing near the desk with his hands loosely folded, that's me. A lighthouse disguised as a concierge, guiding storms away from other people's ships. My wife, Nora, loved that I was good in a crisis. We met when a fashion house tried to set their press event on fire with sparklers jammed into a croquembouche. I moved the smoke to the ceiling with a fan, steered the models to the back entrance, and found Nora standing by a toppled champagne pyramid with both hands full of stemware, laughing at the chaos like it had finally remembered to be interesting. She ran PR for luxury brands, the profession of giving desire a schedule, and she wore sharp black dresses that let her collarbones speak in italics. "You're calm," she said, handing me a glass I didn't need. "Occupational hazard." "I'm Nora," she said, and my name forgot its own letters. We were a quiet, bright thing for a while. Our apartment smelled like citrus and clean shirts. I'd come home from the graveyard shift to find her asleep in my t-shirt, one leg crossed over the quilt like she'd pinned the day to the bed. We learned a private language of arrivals. I'd press a palm to her warm ankle, and she'd wake up slowly, smiling around my name. She'd pour coffee into my hand and steal my tie on her way to the shower. On Sundays, we'd walk to the market and let cherries talk us into bad decisions. We were not greedy, only fluent. YouTube would allow the scenes I loved best, the ones that looked like ordinary domesticity if you didn't listen to the volume. Her mouth at my jaw in the kitchen while the kettle thought about boiling, my hand finding the soft place at the base of her spine when she reached for the top shelf, the way she could turn the act of buttoning my cuff into a promise. Nothing explicit, just the choreography of two people who knew the stage and didn't need an audience. The first wrong note came as a schedule change. Nora had always been happily married to her calendar, but suddenly client tasting stacked up on weeknights with a new severity in the font. She bought a lipstick called After Hours, a color that made evening look like a decision. I noticed a new key on her ring, brushed steel anonymous, the kind hotels prefer for their private floors. She slipped it into our dish at night with an absent flick, as if it had always belonged to us. "What's that one?" I asked. "Carking Studio," she said airily, the way people talk about rooms that have already been named something else. "We're doing a pop-up." A week later, the pop-up developed a taste for midnight. Her texts came with photos of glasses beaded with condensation, of a skyline reflected in a black window, the emojis too pretty to be honest. I replied with my own pictures, a stack of folios behind the desk, a waiter's white jacket hanging like a ghost, a sunrise sneaking over the river to find me still awake and unembarrassed. Our hotel has a package we call Midnight Muse. Marketing wrote the copy with a glass of wine in hand. A private suite, a late dinner, a bath that tries too hard, a playlist designed to forgive. People book it for anniversaries, apologies, or sins that haven't decided what they are yet. On Tuesday, just after 11, the reservation system told me we had a Muse request under a familiar name, N. Leeton, using Nora's maiden form, with a note that hit my eye like déjà vu. View over Dom, strawberries sliced not whole, lights at 30%, curtains open to the river. Someone knew exactly what she liked when she wanted to be seen. I read it twice. I am a professional. I ran the sweet check as if the guest were anyone else. Fresh orchids, crisp corners, laughably soft robes folded like doves. I adjusted the lights to 30% and watched our city turn itself into jewelry in the window. I told myself the inn could be any inn. Leeton is a common enough ghost. When the order came up from room service, I signed for it and brought the cart myself. I tell myself I did it to protect my staff from a problem I knew how to handle. Truth is, I did it because my hands needed evidence. The hallway upstairs felt like a throat. Muse Suite, Riverside. The keycard in my pocket did what it was made to do. I knocked twice and paused, the perfect interval that suggests courtesy without fear. A man's voice called, "Just a second," in that musical, casual tone that makes all seconds feel interchangeable. The chain slid. The door opened 3 inches. I saw the edge of a silk robe, the slope of a bare shoulder with a beauty mark I had kissed in our kitchen 100 mornings. The robe was not black. Nora rarely wore black at home. It was a color between blush and dare. Her hair was up, the way she pinned it when she wanted the night to have hands. She didn't see my face. The chain kept me in the amateur theater of the hallway. The man glanced at me with polite irritation, the kind that means we're busy. He had the hyper-healthy glow of someone who sells a lifestyle on streaming platforms, a jaw that believed itself, wrists that wanted watches, a small smile that tried to memorize me and failed. His hand touched her hip unconsciously when he took the tray. It was the kind of touch married people practice because they get to. "Enjoy your evening," I said, and the sentence actually left my mouth without breaking into any smaller, sadder word. He closed the door gently, which felt worse. There's a way the carpet looks when a man has to keep his feet moving or the floor will turn into a river. I took the elevator down without seeing which way the arrows thought they were going. At the desk, the night auditor looked up from his screen and opened his mouth to say something about payroll. Whatever he saw in my face made him choose to talk about the weather. I stood in the back office and watched the security monitors like a sailor listens to the rigging. You hear storms before you name them. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't text her. I didn't do what men on forums recommend, which is always something theatrical with a bad exit. I checked rooms, I signed for deliveries. I opened a bottle of water and remembered to drink it. At 4, when the river looked like it could forgive anyone anything, the elevator brought down a pair of laughter silhouettes that turned into real people at the front doors. I turned slightly, busy with paperwork, a kindness I could give the part of me that was still married. She came home at 9 smelling like champagne and the air inside a jewelry store. Her lipstick was the color of a contract. I made us eggs we didn't eat. "How was the pop-up?" I asked. She leaned on the counter and put her bare foot on the rung of my stool, calf brushing my thigh. That used to be a spell. It still was, in the worst way, a phantom limb of intimacy. "Loud," she said. "Good brand, you'd have hated it." "Probably," I said, and kissed her shoulder instead of telling the truth. The truth did not need to be told that day. It needed to be placed somewhere safe so it could prove itself useful. I did what night managers do when a room develops a problem we can solve without knocking twice. I collected facts. I looked at the booking log, not her credit card, not her messages, just the notes any manager would see. 3 words the assistant had typed that were too specific to be random: pear blossom bath. It's a scent we carry, an oil I'd brought home once because she liked the way it turned water into permission. The next Muse request under N. Leeton came 2 Thursdays later. Different suite, same note about curtains, a request for the same playlist Nora once called Danger with Manners. I approved the order. I handed the tray to room service. I stayed downstairs. I am not a boy who needs to see a wound again to believe in it. That night between 2 and 3, when the world is least sure it exists, Nora texted a photo of the river with the caption "Could live on this water." I stared at the blue lights sketched on glass and felt a sort of second heartbeat under my ribs. Not romantic, just mechanical. The pump you build when you need to keep going. I don't think of what I did next as revenge. Revenge is loud and hopes for applause. This was more like a well-set table, not dramatic, just ready. The hotel bar had been planning a pop-up tasting for a new spirits client. The client was Nora's. She'd been talking about it for weeks, a rooftop tableau with fairy lights and a synchronized toast at the exact minute the ferry slid under the bridge. I asked our bar manager to let me handle invitations. He gave me the list for approvals like a man handing over a wedding seating chart and a grenade. I sent tasteful emails to the usual suspects: editors, influencers, minor celebrities who believe in glassware. I sent one to Nora, of course, and one to N. Vale, the name I took from a comment tucked into the suite's folio. A casual charge appetizers to Vale, scrawled in the handwriting of men who drift through bills like fog. Then I sent one more, to a woman named Kate Vale, whose public posts featured a little boy with Dorian's exact smile and a house that looked like real life. The invitation was impersonal. Everyone received the same time, the same view, the same promise of something golden. I didn't plan a scene. I planned a room and let the people bring their own weather. The night arrived dressed in its best. The river laid itself at our feet like a ribbon. I moved through the crowd saying people's names into their ears like secrets. Welcome, good to see you. The oysters are better than rumors. Dorian appeared in a navy suit the color of leverage. Nora walked in 5 minutes later, blue silk and bare shoulders, hair pinned with the comb I'd bought her in a market with sticky fingers. She looked extraordinary in that ruthless way good lighting gives to people who already know how to use their hands. We saw each other across the terrace and stopped a beat too long on each other's faces, like actors who know the line and haven't decided whether to say it. Kate arrived 10 minutes after that. She wore a simple black dress and the smile of a woman who suspects she will be relieved by nothing and nevertheless shows up. I introduced myself. She said thank you for the invitation in a tone that meant I recognized your hotel from our card statements and decided to verify reality. I didn't steer anyone together. I didn't point. I just watched truth make its own seating plan. Nora caught sight of Kate first. Her posture changed in that small way a trained body learns, the shoulders squaring a degree, the chin admitting weight. Then Dorian turned, smile already deployed, and saw his life in 2 frames, the wife with the child and the woman with the silk. He said Kate's name as if it were both new and old. The terrace listened. I looked at the river and took a breath that didn't help. There were no thrown glasses. We are a refined hotel. There was only a quiet sentence from Kate that started with "We'll talk at home" and ended with "not here," and the way Dorian's shoulders lost their borrowed inches. Nora didn't cry. She is too professional for tears in public. She moved to the rail and watched the ferry drift under the bridge, and I went and stood beside her the way you stand next to a painting you used to love and no longer understand. "You invited her?" she asked, eyes still on the water. "I invited everyone who belonged in the room," I said. That hurt, not an accusation, an observation from someone trained to measure like me. "So did Tuesday," I said. "I knocked." She closed her eyes for a second, a blink that lasted long enough to feel like choice. Then she turned and rested her hip on the rail, facing me. The silk at her shoulder caught the light and climbed it like a vine. "I wanted the part of me that doesn't have to plan anything," she said. 10 seconds where a door opens and the room decides I'm already the story. "I know that hunger," I said. Night shows me versions of it every day. Does night ever forgive? Night doesn't hold grudges, people do. She looked at my hands on the rail, at the white line across my finger where my wedding band had learned to live, and was now simply a paler version of loyalty. I kissed him, she said. Twice. I told myself names for it that were prettier than what it was. Then I made a reservation that used my maiden name like a mask and thought the mask would be kind. I saw your shoulder, I said, because my body remembered it whether my mind voted or not. I heard his voice. I closed the door. I imagined you would yell, she said, soft. Set the room on fire with shame. You planned a cocktail party. I set a light, I said. The room did the rest. We stood there while the river kept being generous. Music from the bar rose and settled like the tide. People talked in tones we could easily ignore. I had the sense you get sometimes in a hotel that you are both inside and outside your life. The building an aquarium, the world a different temperature. I can't ask you to stay, she said, after a minute that felt longer than most. I can't use what I'm good at to keep you. Don't, I said. Ask me something hard instead. She frowned. Like what? Tell me you'll sit in our kitchen with no makeup and tell the truth without making it a campaign. Tell me we'll learn how to want each other again without using borrowed lighting. Tell me if you won't now, before I decide to want what you can't give. She let out a breath that wasn't a sigh, more a minute leaving the body. Okay, she said. Tomorrow, no mascara, no pitch. You can knock twice if you want. I laughed then, a short, honest sound that had been waiting for weeks. We didn't touch on the terrace. YouTube would have liked a kiss with the skyline clapping. Real life liked restraint. She finished her champagne. I wished guests good night. Dorian ghosted toward the elevator with the miserable dignity of a brand whose ad campaign just learned about gravity. Kate left with her head up, a woman married to her own spine. The fairy lights forgave us for misusing them. At home the next morning, Nora wore one of my shirts and no armor. She set her phone face down, which is a bigger promise than it looks. We made coffee slower than necessary and sat at the tiny table we'd been ignoring in favor of nicer restaurants. She talked, not in press release sentences, in the messy paragraphs of a person trying to unlearn applause. I listened, not like a manager, but like a man who remembers what it felt like to press his palm to his wife's ankle and be greeted by his own name. When we cried, it was the quiet kind you can put on television without a warning. We made rules later, small and human. If you want 10 seconds, ask for them. Ring the bell, lean in the doorway, say, "Be bad with me at home." If you need a hotel, book hours under our name and keep the curtains open to the river so the city can be witness instead of accomplice. Nothing cinematic, just decent choreography. I am still the night manager. I still walk the lobby at 2 a.m. and keep strangers' secrets safe until morning decides to come get them. Sometimes I carry a tray up to a door where someone expects strawberries, and I knock twice, and I hear footsteps that belong to people who will tell the truth tomorrow. Sometimes I go home after sunrise and find Nora asleep in my shirt, leg thrown over the quilt, and I press my palm to her ankle, and she wakes with my name on her mouth in a whisper that says yes without having to sell it. Night taught me that decisions look different in dim light. Day taught me to keep the ones worth keeping. The river keeps its own counsel. Our marriage is learning to breathe in that rhythm. Not a vengeance, not a brand, just two people remembering how to open the same door and walk through together, even when the room beyond is not the one they booked.